I am Michael Searle, president of the Silurians Press Club. Welcome to our annual awards gala. We've been doing this since 1945. That's 77 years. The club itself has been around since 1924, meaning, one, that we were organized just a few years after the last global epidemic, and two, that we will soon be celebrating our 100th anniversary. You'll find a synopsis of this history, plus a list of tonight's awards and a lot of other good stuff in the Silurian News that was on your seat. Don't miss the story by Times morgue editor Jeff Roth on how he ignored the pandemic and went to work every day, supplying you Times reporters with those crucial clips. Are they still clips? Or has it all been scanned? The newsletter was put together by Joe Berger, a Times man who will be the next Silurians president. Thank you for a great job, Joe. Thanks also to the two people who made this event possible. Jack Deasy organized the judging of the awards, notified a lot of the winners, wrote the story for the Silurian News, gave us all a script for this event, and completed the job in the middle of a family emergency. So we've already given him a hand. He deserved one. The other crucial person was Scotty Williston in the red shirt. The dinner chair. She did the hard, complicated work to get you all here tonight and in those seats. We'll be handing out 17 awards this evening, plus 2 President's Choice Awards. They are all examples of exemplary local journalism. The winners will get a hefty Silurians medallion to prop up in their bookcase. The runners-up will be Merit Award winners. Will get a certificate of merit. Joe and I will hand out the first 2 awards now. The rest will come with dessert and coffee. Yes, many of them will go to the Times and Newsday. But we could not be more pleased that awards will also go to young reporters carrying forward our journalistic mission in new organizations like the City, Type Investigations, and the student publications of the CUNY Newmark Journalism School and my alma mater, the Columbia Journalism School. Good. Speaking of young journalists, I want to recognize 3 briefly. The club gives $2,000 scholarships to local students of distinction every year, and we just awarded 3. The Fellowship Scholarship, which goes to an outstanding CUNY student with a strong interest in local reporting, and it was awarded to Youssef Bonab. The Dennis Dugan Award goes to a student who enjoys chronicling the life of ordinary New Yorkers, and that went to Candice Pedraza, also of the CUNY Grad School. The third scholarship goes to Chelsea Borman, a journalism student at NYU with a strong interest in international reporting. They will all be honored. They'll all be honored in person at our September luncheon here at the National Arts Club. Now, to tonight's first award for breaking news in print. It goes to the New York Times staff for their comprehensive coverage of the resignation of Governor Andrew Cuomo, under fire for alleged sexual harassment. The stories dug into the agonizing decision-making process in the Cuomo camp, how his resignation and disgrace tarnished his family's legacy, and a look at the future under Governor Hochul. Okay, a merit certificate in the breaking news category goes to the staff of the City online newsroom for their reporting on the same story, Cuomo's resignation.
The medallion for feature news reporting goes to Saki Knafo of Type Communications. Saki did a deep investigation of a single police precinct run by a commander who was seen tolerating abusive behavior by cops during the George Floyd protests. Through dozens of interviews with rank-and-file cops, which is not easy to do, residents of Brownsville, Brooklyn, and police brass, He offered the public a window into how city policy during the de Blasio administration allowed for unfit commanders to rise as far as they had, and how they damaged the relations between the police and the communities they patrol. The Merit Award in the Feature News category goes to David Brand of City Limits. He examined the impact of COVID-19 on homeless New Yorkers and how cavalierly they were treated, particularly the 10,000 the city first placed in hotel rooms, then moved back into congregate group shelters. And by the way, I hope all of you are noticing that these awards were given to Type Communications and City Limits, not your conventional newspapers. And I think we have something is happening to journalism in the city, which is wonderful, that there are many more outlets to do great reporting than there ever used to be. And I think that's a very hopeful sign for our profession. That was ad-lib, not bad.
Science and health reporting. The medallion goes to Liz Donovan and Muriel Alarcon. They were the chief reporters on a project that exposed abuses in the home health care industry. The story, called Low Pay, Loneliness in a Booming Industry, was an unusual collaboration between the Columbia Journalism School Investigations team, the New York Times, and Type Investigations. Congrats to all three. I'm hoping Liz or Muriel can talk, come up.
Hello. No, I just want to thank you the possibility to be today, and we are so glad we were part of a really great group of journalists who teach us how to write a story collectively. So this was the result of a collaborative work, and also in a very important moment where we feel the need to shine a light into those workers who hadn't had a voice before and were very important to take care of all of us.
And just thanks to our editors, Kristen Lombardi and Kathy Feldman and Sarah Stillman.
Thank you.
We gave the Times the award for the breaking news story on the Cuomo, and Kirsten, one of the people involved in that, is going to say a few words.
So thank you to all of you. And this was a difficult story to report. And I think in a lot of ways, although we're very happy to accept this honor, I think everyone in the New York press corps worked very hard on this story. I don't want to leave anyone out, but the Albany Times Union, the Wall Street Journal, the City, Newsday, Washington Post, New York Magazine, everyone fought for this story. And so I think in a lot of ways this award belongs to a press corps that went up against a very difficult governor and came out with some very important work. So thank you so much.
The merit certificate in the science category goes to Newsday. For back inside the red zone, in which the Newsday staff in 2021 revisited a Nassau County hospital that was devastated by the wave of COVID a year earlier. The reporters found a new crisis as the Delta variant caused fresh waves of infection. To continue with the presentations, let me introduce my friend Alan Frank, a former Silurians president and reporter for CNN, ABC, Bloomberg, you name it.
Thank you, Michael. He asked us to tell you a little bit about us for those of you who do not know us. Mr. Searle once was the editor of the Penn State student newspaper. And he's gone a long way from there. He edited Ford Foundation magazine's Police, which was for police chiefs. Really, the idea was that they would read and figure out how to reform their behavior. And they're not funding that anymore, but then he went on to a distinguished career at Time, Business Week in Bloomberg, among other places. Anyway, we're all pals from graduate school. I started at the Anchorage, Alaska Daily News, if you don't count my internship at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, where I'm from. And anyway, I bounced to the Washington Star until it collapsed, then Forbes, ABC, CNN, Bloomberg, then internet puke for the Daily Beast writing about Bernie Madoff. But enough about that. It's my privilege to introduce some really great reporting. And if one of you found my script that I dropped in the bar, it'd be a lot easier than me reading this on the phone. However, fortunately, I took the precaution of emailing it to myself. So, the medallion for the best investigative reporting goes to Amy Julia Harris of the New York Times for her story Profiting Off the Homeless. This series excavated the hidden aspects of New York City's huge and often underperforming system to house the homeless. Diligent document digging, shades of, what was that movie about the Boston Globe? And numerous interviews by Amy Julia Harris uncovered persuasive profiteering and conflicts of interest, imagine that, involving some of the city's most powerful and politically connected landlords. Her stories showed that Mayor Bill de Blasio's promised reforms actually fostered a system that lacked accountability. What a surprise. That system exacerbated the problem by overlooking or aiding unscrupulous homeless shelters operated by supposedly nonprofit organizations. Amy, please come up. This is really heavy. Don't drop this in your towel.
Wow.
Nobody showed these babies. They're really neat. They come with a bag, too. Okay, now stand up here and tell us about this story, please.
Okay, great. Thank you so much to the Silurians for this honor. It's really nice to be recognized. I also wanted to thank my editor, Kirsten Danis, who, right when I was new at the Times, suggested looking into the homeless shelter industry in New York and said there was a lot of corruption there and a lot more to dig into. So this story sort of started with a tip, and just want to thank a lot of the women and people in homeless shelters for taking the risk of talking, and the New York Times for being interested in giving this a platform. So thank you very much.
So the Best Investigative Reporting Merit Award goes to Jesse Coburn of Streets Blog NYC for ignoring dismissed. Now, for those of you who have not read this story, this was a spectacular data dive into what happens if you call 311 to complain about the police. The answer is they effing ignore it. Or if they really think you're serious, maybe the police anonymously threaten you. This is a whale of a story. Anyway, congratulations, Jesse. Please stand up. Guess what? He analyzed, 26 million calls? How many calls? I mean, a lot of calls. Okay. The medallion for business and financial reporting goes to James Midori of Newsday for fraud costing billions. I'm sure you all remember the economic injury to disaster loan program that was supposed to help small businesses cope with the pandemic. As his dogged reporting for Newsday found, the money was often going straight to fraudsters. Hold open page 1. Analyzing data from the Small Business Administration, he discovered that nearly, are you ready for this number? Anybody want to guess who hasn't read the story? Give me a guess on this number. 850,000 people had their identities fraudulently used by criminals who may have stolen, here's another number you won't know, nearly $80 billion, more than a third of all the pandemic aid. He uncovered shocking examples of sloppy or even non-existent oversight programs run by the Small Business Administration. Here is James Midori.
I'd like to thank the Silurians for this amazing honor. I've been writing about pandemic relief since it started, and I want to recognize 3 people. The first person is Joseph Stewart. Joseph Stewart is a retired NYPD officer who called up Newsday, and he reached one of our receptionists, Bernadette Murray, who's another person I want to thank tonight, because she had presence of mind. She took down Mr. Stewart's telephone number and his email address, and then she called me up and she said, JT, call this guy right away. He's got a great story. So I called Mr. Stewart, and that's how the investigation began. Yes, indeed, he was the victim of identity theft. And criminals in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, used his identity and the identity of about 1,000 other people to successfully apply for COVID-19 economic injury disaster loans. The other person I would like to thank is my editor, Margaret Corvini. None of this happens without her, and like all reporters, we want to report and report and report, and sometimes we dig a little hole for ourselves, and you need a good editor to pull you out. And Margaret does a wonderful job of that literally every day with me. But the sad news is, and you may have seen this, yesterday there was a hearing before the House Select Subcommittee on the coronavirus crisis, where the top law enforcement agencies in this country talked about fraud in the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program and the Paycheck Protection Program. And each of them said, this is just the beginning. It's worse than we thought it was going to be, and this is going to go on for years. And much of this money we will never get back because it's been spent. So thanks to the Silurians for this tremendous honor. I'm very appreciative. Thank you.
Congratulations. Really great story. However, in this highly competitive category, we have 2 merit awards. One goes to Gene Rimbach, Albert Koloff, and Scott Fallon of The Record, NorthJersey.com, for the precarious financial situations of New Jersey's colleges and universities. Susan Antilla of Type Investigations wins for a story co-published by The Nation, the title of which is The Dangers of Working Black on Wall Street, while Black on Wall Street. Antilla showed us that not even highly successful workers could overcome the rigged complaint system that could squash their careers if they dared to speak up about racism at work. Susan, please stand up. You know, I know we all get tired moving our lips while we read, so some of these stories that I'm mentioning, if you didn't get to read them in the first go-around, they're really worth looking up. Now the medallion for editorials, commentary, and public service goes to Jan Ransom and Jonah Bromwich of the New York Times for Dysfunction at Rikers Island. This series exploded the conventional wisdom about what was causing catastrophe among prisoners on Rikers Island during the pandemic. Aided by data journalists Bianca Polaro, Jan and Jonah delivered definitive stories on Rikers. One key story showed city leaders were stationing guards around the system in wasteful and capricious ways, as drivers, secretaries, even bakers. Jailhouses were left unguarded even as some of the buildings were literally being set on fire. Come on up, Jan. Here we go.
Beautiful, thank you. So just want to thank the Silurians for this recognition. It's greatly appreciated. Would also like to thank my editor who's not here, Michael LaForgia, for insightful editing. You know, this was a very important story at a time when it's very easy to overlook the people who are held on Rikers and working behind the jail system. You know, lives were lost, and, you know, it was due to a lot of dysfunction and mismanagement, and very happy that we were able to bring that to light. So thank you.
Greg Smith of the city wins the Merit Award for the toll of New York City Housing Authority's lead lies about lead poisoning. Now we're going to take a break for dinner. I know you thought it was never coming. It's from the pipes, not from the food, fortunately. And if any of the merit winners did not pick up their certificates downstairs, they should pick them up now. Let's resume with the Radioactive Medal for Environmental Reporting. It goes to Jeffrey Rothfeder and Christopher Mag, did I say that right? Mag? I had it right the first time? Oh, hard to believe. A fortune for nuclear drawdown. This story in frightening detail documents how two questionable companies are profiting from the cleanup of decommissioned nuclear plants. Their reporting sounds the alarm about whether utility ratepayers and taxpayers ultimately will be fleeced by two companies that may not have either the expertise or the staying power to protect the environment. As our judges put it, quote, "This deeply reported, masterfully crafted narrative brings fresh insight, new clarity, rich historical perspective, and renewed public attention to bear on a broad sweep of vexatious issues surrounding the ongoing decommissioning of the nation's aging nuclear power plants." To wit, how did companies with shady backgrounds and no experience dismantling nuclear installations land such critical assignments? Who gets to pay for the cost overruns? Chris, please come up.
Thank you. Thank you to the Silurians. I really appreciate this on behalf of myself, Fortune Magazine, and also my co-author, Jeffrey Rothfeder. He couldn't be here tonight. This story was given to me as a kind of an act of generosity, which I would like to repay. I am a columnist, enterprise reporter at the Bergen Record in New Jersey and USA Today. And yes, some local journalism still in there. And I was reporting a story that was kind of bogus. It was an editor's idea. Most of this editor's ideas are good. This one wasn't so good. It was New Jersey, if you've driven there, you have a lot of gas stations next to busy highways. And it was tragic. There were 2 car crashes in a row where people were driving on drugs and they ran into gas station attendants. It was bad. And so I was given the assignment to say, hey, New Jersey has a problem of gas stations too close to highways. And I'm like, okay, fine. I'll do it. I'm a good soldier. And so I'm calling this professor at Rutgers University, who's one of the top experts in the world on risk assessment. And the entire interview, he's just like, yeah, that's a problem. And then at the end, he says, you know this is bullshit, right? And I said, yeah, sorry, but thank you for your dealing with it anyway. And he said, you know what's really interesting is nuclear decommissioning. And I said, what is that? Because I had no idea what that means. And it turns out what that means is that the United States has the oldest fleet of nuclear reactors in the world for commercial power. And they are all closing down about a decade earlier than expected, and there's not enough money to do the job. There just isn't. Some of them will be fine, and some of them will really not be fine, and we are the backstop. One of these will go completely wrong, and it's going to cost us $1 billion or so to fix up their mess up by these 2 companies that he mentioned that are not up to this job. So the act of generosity is, this story is underreported. I've done what I can. I hope to do some more. I've pitched the New Yorker. I've received silence. So if anybody wants to take this story, do the New Yorker. Yeah, New Yorker. If somebody wants to take on this story, compete with me, please. Like, this is a great story that these 2 companies that are not up, I don't want to say they're not up to the job. I think they're not up to the job. But the problem is we don't know because we can't see their books. That's a serious problem. Do they have the money? Nobody knows. So nuclear decommissioning, it's a real story. There's a lot more legs to it, and I encourage anybody who wants it to take it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not sure how to follow that. I think a couple of ways. Number one, before I introduce the new editor of the Silurians News, which I'm going to do in a few minutes, I'm going to suggest a story that we have in the Silurian News, which is bogus stories editors have suggested we write. And the editors in the room can contribute the opposing opinion. Anyway, if we could convince Christopher for the one-time $25 initiation fee and the $60 a year exorbitant membership fee, all of which is available to anyone in this room, we would love to have you all join. I think that would be a great article in the Silurian News. I would love to read it. I might even have a bullshit story or two to contribute myself. Anyway, moving on. We have 2 merit awards again in this category. One more on the hot topic of nuclear waste. Adrian Hedden and Thomas C. Zambito of the USA Today Network for Can the Nation Solve Its Nuclear Waste Problem? Merit Award also goes to Elizabeth Kim of Gothamist and WNYC Radio for her really well-written and reported on radio and in print story, Why One Queens Block Has Flooded for Decades. Elizabeth, please stand up. And as Christopher raised the subject of who wants to hire me, I was thinking, geez, if I were a news director and I wanted to find a guy a year from now to go to Ukraine to survey what's happened with the nuclear power plants, I know the guy to call. But I'm not sure he'd want to go. But I would hire Elizabeth for any flood in a second. And a lot of other stuff. It's a great story if you read it. Okay, now, the medallion for the best feature broadcast. The Newsday television team. This is also a great print story. The story is called He's Going to Kill Me, Joanna Byrd's story. The producer, writer, and reporter was Pat Dolan, who unfortunately is not here. Investigative reporter and producer, Sandra Peddie, who will come up in a minute. Producers, Robert Cassidy, John Keating, and Jim Baumbach. And Face Jesse. Come on up while I read this. This television investigation, part of a Newsday project on policing, captured the despair of a dead woman. This is a story that unwinds. Relatives of Joanna Byrd describe how she was pursued and ultimately murdered by a harassing former boyfriend whose repeated assaults were downplayed by police, apparently since he was being recruited as an informant. She should have survived, but neglect and bad law enforcement by the Suffolk County Police led to her death. Except for Newsday, Sandra? And whoever else, bring the whole team up. Well, come on, let's have it.
Before we came to the Silurians tonight, my colleagues, Paul LaRocca and Dave Schwartz, and I met with our former investigations editor, Marty Gottlieb, whom some of you might know. Yes. And he said, winning the Silurians is a big deal. And it is, because this is an organization of such smart, passionate people who care about journalism. And every time it's inspiring to hear these stories and to talk to everyone here. So thank you very much. This is really very much an honor. I should also say the story of Joanna Byrd was really, for me, an eye-opener, because she was a woman who was trapped in a relationship of domestic violence, which I frankly did not understand before I spoke to all her family members. And they really opened up my eyes to how a woman could be trapped the way she was. And finally, our owner, Pat Dolan, did a TV series about her story. Excuse me, but how many media organizations have an owner who's a journalist who does stories? And he's not here, so I can't be accused of sucking up to him. But thank you, Pat, and thank you, all of you.
The Merit Award for Best Television Feature goes to Walt Kane and Karen Antonito of News 12 Networks for Justice Delayed. Now it's my honor to introduce the next editor of the Silurian News, Eileen Jacobson.
Anyway, thank you, Alan. Well, I too was told to say things about myself. I'm also the first vice president of the Silurians. And full disclosure, I worked after a few years at the Washington Post in the style section in the Sunday magazine. I worked for Newsday for about 30 years. Yeah. And thank you. And during that time, I covered news, I covered personal finance, I wrote about books, and my favorite was that I reviewed New York theater for several years. I was a Tony voter, yeah, for a while, yeah. And lately, I've been freelancing, mainly for the New York Times. First, I was reviewing the professional theater on Long Island for them, and covering the arts. And now I'm writing some of the living-in features about Manhattan neighborhoods for the real estate section, which is fun. I have also written a couple of books, one called Women in Charge, and I wrote about half of the Consumer Reports money book. So you can see I have done a lot in many years. Yeah. So it is my honor to present the winners of the Arts and Culture Reporting category, of which I was one of the 3 judges. And we had a lot of articles to read, and we chose for the Medallion the article, or several articles that were related, The Road Back to Broadway by Michael Paulson. Oh, there he is, yeah. He is the theater reporter for the New York Times, and I was just watching I was watching you on TV the other, or on my computer recently, interviewing some, or hosting some Broadway people. Michael's detailed reporting about the bounce back after a long hiatus included looks at the technical issues, the personal hardships of Broadway workers, the new attitudes toward racism, the economic impact on New York, and the ways actors had to recondition themselves, a little higher, had to recondition themselves after a year and a half of not needing to. In a piece about the hard-hit show Moulin Rouge, he interviewed 52 members of the production, not in person because it was during COVID. In December, when 33 Broadway shows were scheduled, he visited Sardi's, which I'm sure was a hardship, to outline some of the pitfalls and many of the joys of Broadway's comeback. So, Michael, please come up here, and I hope you'll say a few words.
So I can't even count how many times during the pandemic people said to me, do you really still have a job? I'm the theater reporter at the Times, and people just couldn't believe there was anything to write about. But of course, this was the period when the beat became more important than ever. An industry that had been booming for a decade just sank, and so many people lost their livelihoods, so many artistic projects were cut off at the knees. And the story of Broadway, and more broadly theater in America, has become just enormously important for those of us who love the arts, of course, but also for the economy of New York City. So it was I can't say it was a pleasure, but it was a privilege to work on these stories and to be part of watching as this industry tries to come back, which is still ongoing. I'm really grateful to the New York Times for supporting this kind of reporting, and I want to say I'm really grateful to the Silurians for recognizing arts reporting year after year. It's, of course, a niche that is not growing, but it's one that matters enormously, I think, to all of us. So thank you.
We also chose 2 merit winners. One of them was an article entitled Josephine Baker, First American to Enter France's Pantheon by J. Alex Tarquinio, hope I got that right, in Foreign Policy. This was a warm and inspirational article that was published November 29th, 2021, which was the eve of the splashy ceremony that marked Baker's induction into the Pantheon. And Alex captured her spirit and her importance as a civil rights advocate, as well as a performer. She was the first Black woman to enter the Pantheon and the first entertainer. She grew up in segregated St. Louis, and in 1963, she spoke at the historic March on Washington next to Martin Luther King. Also, she has a restaurant named in her honor here in New York, Chez Josephine. Alex, if you're here, please stand up. Oh, okay. Very nice. The other merit winner was an article called "The Challenge of Making an Archive of the Climate Crisis" by Sophie Hegney, who is here. Yeah. And it appeared in The New Yorker. It's an insightful feature that explores both locally and globally how we might document the climate crisis, which threatens both objects and archives. She opens it with the article with a look at the preservation of objects destroyed by Hurricane Sandy and moves on to one woman's attempt to create an open-ended, participatory archive of objects. So please stand, Sophie. And congratulations. Yeah. So moving on to the next category, people profiles, which was another popular category that the three of us judges had to read many articles for. And we chose as the medallion winner something called "He Bombed the Nazis, Outwitted the Soviets, and Modernized Christmas" by Laurie Gwen Shapiro, which was, is she here? Yeah, oh, good. Published in the New York Times. Laurie's profile of Cy Spiegel, both a war hero and the father of the artificial tree, during his nearly century-long life. He must 98 now. Wow, yeah. But he looked very good in the photo. It starts with a bang. Mr. Spiegel's B-17 bomber had been hit by shrapnel over Berlin, and he had to crash land in Poland, since landing in Nazi Germany would have been disastrous, especially for him, a Jewish pilot. In all, he flew an astonishing 35 successful bombing missions, but anti-Semitism crashed his flying career. He found work as a machinist and became a multimillionaire when he invented the artificial Christmas tree. Perhaps the most surprising part of this story is that it hasn't been told before. And Laurie, what am I saying here? Laurie, who is a documentary filmmaker who turned to writing nonfiction at age 50, quite a nice career change. She's also a chronic eavesdropper, and she discovered him in Riverside Park. So here's Laurie.
Hi. First of all, I would like to thank the Silurians for this honor, and I absolutely want to thank my editor, Bill Ferguson, from the Times, this was my first article for the Times, so he really shepherded it through. And I will tell you a little great update that after the story went out, it also got translated in Spanish as well, and it got picked up by the London Times. And I think that Cy, who I met in front of the Eleanor Roosevelt statue in Riverside Park, was pretty lonely when I met him. I don't know if this was in my biography, but I'm Amelia Earhart's biographer. My book on her marriage is coming out next year. And I overheard him talking about Amelia Earhart and flying an Eleanor Roosevelt in front of the statue. And I looked at him and I said, "Are you possibly from World War II?" And he said, "I am." And I was in his apartment shortly because he said, I have nothing else to do. And I will tell you that after the story came out, pretty much every nonagenarian pilot and bombardier contacted me wanting their story profiled in the Times. And then I would kind of push them on to Cy, and he set up a Zoom group with 12 nonagenarian pilots and bombardiers, and they have a really wonderful time every week. So, and one last coda is, what was shocking to me was how he was shut out from the airline industry when he came back because he was Jewish. And one thing that has happened is that we were invited to the Wings Club, which he was not allowed to be a member of during World War II, which is, as you know, many people might know, it's in New York City, and they welcomed him in and gave him a star treatment, and he was so thrilled to go into the Wings Club. And he sends his regards to everyone here. He's just turned 98, and he was having a meeting with his gym trainer tonight. So I think I'm hoping that he makes 100. It was a second lease on life for him. And again, thank you to everybody for the support.
In this category, too, we have 2 merit winners. One is Alex Vadukel. I got that right? And who wrote what he called Lives of New York, a collection of obits that he wrote for the New York Times. In the time of many deaths, Alex chose to bring his subjects, none of them famous, back to life with his well-crafted pieces filled with telling quotes and wonderful anecdotes. A backstage aide at Carnegie Hall, a street artist and a pioneer in gay pornography were among his subjects. Alex, can you stand up? I know you're here. There you are. Yeah. And the second merit award goes to the ultimate obit, the real unabridged, authorized warts and all saga of Brooklyn's trolley king Bob Diamond by Simi Horowitz, which surely also is a winner for the best title tonight, or at least the most unusual. This was published, Simi is a feature writer and a film critic, and this was published in streetsblog.nyc.org. I think I've got that right. And she profiles Bob Diamond, a man some view as a genius while others thought him crazy. Her article evokes a unique and controversial Brooklyn personality, a self-styled archaeologist who in 1980 rediscovered a long-forgotten 19th century train tunnel beneath Atlantic Avenue. For 30 years, he gave well-attended tours of the tunnel, but he also got embroiled in multi-million-dollar lawsuits and a failed trolley project, and he died poor at age 62. So, Simi, where are you? I forget, yeah, stand up. Very nice work. Yeah. So I'm also giving out the awards for minority affairs reporting. The medallion goes to a group of people for something called No Fair Shot at Vaccinations, which was published in The City. In a series of stories, Josefa Velasquez, Ann Choi, I hope I'm getting these names right, Will Welch, and Claudia Irizarry Aponte of The City revealed that at the height of the pandemic in January 2021, when vaccines first became available, members of minority communities hit hardest by the virus, many of them essential workers, had difficulty getting their shots. when the city focused attention on the problem, the city being the city, not New York City, focused attention on the problem, Governor Cuomo and city officials, again, now this is New York City officials, took action to correct the problem. This is a very good example of why local journalism is important. Here to receive the awards are members of the city's reporting team. So.
We just want to say thank you to the Silurians for this incredible honor. We couldn't have done the work we did during the pandemic if it wasn't for having some boots on the ground reporting in neighborhoods that have quite frankly been underreported on or reported on in a negative light. And we wouldn't have been able to write the stories we did if we didn't have a diverse newsroom. So this is our pitch to hire, a diverse crowd from all walks of life. And a special thank you to our editors, Alyssa Katz and Jerry Hester, and a special thank you to my mom. She is a housekeeper, and that's how our first story started, because a bunch of wealthy Long Islanders were traveling into places in the Bronx, in Queens, getting vaccinations for the COVID vaccine. So if it wasn't for her alerting me to that, her clientels were all driving into seedy neighborhoods, which is a word that she learned, we wouldn't have been able to do all of this amazing work. So thank you all.
The merit winner in this category of minority affairs reporting is called On the Waterfront, and it was reported by student reporters of the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism at CUNY, at City University. And it published by the New York City News Service at CUNY. The article is an exploration of the monumental transformation of the Harlem River waterfront. It's inspiring both dread and excitement in the South Bronx. And two of the students who were involved, who have now graduated, Natalie Pert and Griffin Kelly, are here, I think. Well, come on up. Yeah. Well, stand up and be applauded. Yeah. The last category here, for me, not other people, is breaking news photography. And the medallion went to Steve Faust of Newsday, whose photo, a father and son reunion, is on the cover. Now, that's why I have this here. This is the photo that won first place, and he's. Let me just see, and it explains. Well, you can read it yourselves, but I'll tell a little bit of it. It's a reunion of a son and father, and his father, in 2021 when let me see. When they were reunited in New Hyde Park after learning that the father could stay with his family on Long Island. He had been held for 8 months by U.S. immigration officials and threatened with deportation to his native India. So apparently whoever sent this in or decided on it really focused on both the hands, or they were saying that this is the important part, the hands and also their eyes, glistening eyes. So it's it's something that you need to look at for a while, and then you realize that it's what a fine photo it is. And I think that John Keating is here to collect it. Yeah, good. The Merit Award also went to a Newsday photographer, J. Conrad Williams, Jr., who unfortunately couldn't make it today. It was called A Hero's Farewell. Conrad captured dramatic images of the funeral of a Nassau County police officer named Matthew Perlunger, who died at age 50 after a 4-month battle with cancer. The cancer was linked to the toxic dust and air following the World Trade Center terrorist attacks. He had rushed to Ground Zero, where through late October, he spent 85 hours on rescue and recovery operations. So, you want to stand for Conrad? Not really. Okay. But that was fine. And now, I'm going to introduce Tony Gaida, a former Silurians president and longtime anchor for NBC News.
Good evening, good evening. Thank you for being here. I'm delighted to be here. It is still evening, isn't it? The hardest working man in the Silurians is Jack Deasy, who is the awards committee chairman and runs this whole thing, and he deserves your applause, among other things. And Jack did ask us to say a couple of words about ourselves. It's late, but I'll just say this. I mean, he sort of said in suggesting, perhaps we'd like to return to our first early formative impressions about the news business. And I said, Jack, sorry, I don't do impressions. Let's get to best sports reporting and commentary. The medallion goes to Willie Weinbaum for a story in a platform. I never, I don't know. When I worked in news, there weren't platforms, but there are now. And it was, the platform is called The Undefeated, but I think it's got a new name even now. The story is called A Handshake from a White Teammate Signaled Jackie Robinson's Arrival in America's Game. Willie, by the way, who gets the medallion, is a member of the Silurians. Come on up here, Willie. It's an extraordinary story.
Firstly, I'd like to thank the Silurians for this honor. Here it is. Thank you. Everybody knows the story of Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier in the major leagues, April 15th, 1947. But a year earlier, he was playing for the Dodgers farm team, the Montreal Royals, who opened the season in Jersey City against the Giants' top farm team. And that day, Jackie Robinson, in his second at-bat, hit a home run. He had 4 hits. He had stolen bases. He had runs scored. He forced balks, and he helped his team win the game. When he rounded third base and headed for home on his home run, he was greeted by a white teammate, George Shuba, a name not that many of you know probably. George Shuba shook his hand, and that picture appeared in newspapers across North America and made an impact. And the story got lost in some respects, it got distorted in some respects, and his son, that is George Shuba's son, Mike Shuba, decided he wanted to commit himself while his father was still alive to making this story into something. And he popularized the story of the handshake. And now, years after George Shuba passed away, the story resonates for many different people. And in Youngstown, Ohio, Shuba's hometown, a statue has been erected to commemorate that handshake. And the story that we did, and I'm so thankful to the Undefeated and to ESPN, my employer, for the opportunity to spend 6 months working on reporting this story. That statue commemorates the handshake and sends the message that doing the right thing resonates forever. And I'm very appreciative of the job the editor of the story did, Steve Reese, the photo editor, Anna Gramling contributed as well. They did a wonderful job. And we did a video component. I worked with Clinton Yates as well as AJ Irish. And the story idea came from a friend and colleague, Artie Burko. And all of us are grateful to the Silurians for the award and to our readers and to our employer for this opportunity. And one last thing, I'm delighted, my wife, is here tonight because she's the most important person in my life. Thank you.
One of the things Willie left out in that great recounting of his great story is that I think of it as a grace note, but it's a hell of a note. You remember there used to be a mayor in Jersey City called Frank Haag, or maybe you don't, but he was called Frank I Am the Law Haag. And for 30 years he was mayor of Jersey City, and his word and his actions were the law. And on that day that this happened, this historic moment of Jackie Robinson hitting his first home run in his second time at bat, first time in the major leagues, in a minor league uniform, Frank Haag had made sure that Roosevelt Stadium in Jersey City, which holds about 25,000, or used to, 25,000 people, there were about 50,000 people there. And he had also declared a city holiday to commemorate the whole thing. So it was huge, and it got lost, and thanks to Willie and everybody who worked on that, it's not lost anymore. We got two merit awards in this category. One goes to Amanda J. Franks of the New York Times with a story called Defying a Shock to the System, a very harrowing account of a woman whose husband murdered their two children and then killed himself, and a woman who was left with that tragedy on her hand, who chose to find balm, if you can, in that situation by polar ocean plunges. And it's about all I can say, but you need to read the story. And the other is merit award goes to Sam Anderson, also of the New York Times, who wrote a piece titled Kevin Durant and Possibly, this was part of, I'm quoting the title, Kevin Durant and Possibly the Greatest Basketball Team of All Time. Sam's profile of Durant is an understatement, if anything, about Durant's extraordinary basketball skills, but the team, the Nets, well, not so much. Neither of them are here tonight, unfortunately, so we'll move on to... Oh, sorry. They told me you weren't here. Let's hear it for Amanda J. Franks. They told me you weren't here. Fairbanks, I'm sorry. Well, come up here. If I say you get to speak, you get to speak. If you want to. Okay. I apologize.
Oh, you're fine.
Okay. Well, thanks. I feel fine.
Well, I'm Amanda M. Fairbanks, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you to the Silurians. Thank you mostly to Hillary Howard, who is my editor on this story. This was in the height of COVID, when we never thought we were leaving our homes, and I was on the brink of divorce from my husband and working and taking care of our two little kids. And I started doing these polar plunges with the only other woman on the eastern end of Long Island that would do them with me. And slowly, over the course of these many weeks and months, I came to learn the backstory of Stephanie Reese, which was that she was this incredible competitive tennis player, and then it turns out she had survived this just horrifying tragedy of her two children being murdered. And it was a story of resilience and of grace and just this unimaginable rising above this horrible tragedy. So thank you to Hillary for this story and letting me share it with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda, and again, my apologies. We move on to sports photography. The medallion goes to Thomas A. Ferrara of Newsday for a photograph called Using His Head. which captures a Garden City High School midfielder, Ian Bailey, heading the ball in a semifinal soccer match against Mineola High School. Thomas, are you here? You're going to come up and, sure. You'll just pick up the award. He's selling these, by the way, outside. So if you didn't get one tonight, you can see him later. I did look I was one of the people who voted on this award, and I did look Ian Bailey up. This great shot of him and the ball, hitting his head. And turns out Ian Bailey was the valedictorian of that class, and he's now in Duke. Is it? Anyway, he's on to an extraordinary academic career, and I hope he's still playing soccer. Merit winner, J. Conrad Williams again, second merit award of the night, for a photograph called Wave Runners, which captures the boys and girls of the Long Beach High School surfing team. Who knew? There are surfing teams. That's glad to hear that. It's the only one on Long Island, by the way. High school surfing team. Feature photography, medallion to Desiree Rios of the New York Times for an extraordinarily moving photo essay entitled, "It's Not Enough Living Through a Pandemic on $100 a Week." Desiree, where are you? Desiree couldn't make it tonight. She had a great photograph, and she's out taking more right now, and she'll be back later. So Desiree's not here, but Amanda is. And I think Amanda could come up and accept for no, I don't. Thank you. Someone should take these. Well, we could give it to this guy. He's opening a store, in front. In the what do I want to say? The merit awards. There were two. The Times swept this category, by the way, and getting both merit awards. One goes to 15 freelancers for a photograph called New York City Wakes Up, which, as I understand it, was a photo essay about a foot of snow in the magazine, about a foot of snow one day in January. And the other merit award is another photo essay entitled, "These 115 Workers Kept New York City Alive During Its Darkest Hours." Those photos were taken by Todd Heisler. The text was by David Gonzalez. Unfortunately, and I'm about to say something, and maybe we'll hear, like we heard from Amanda, that I'm wrong, but I've been told that none of these people is here tonight. So we move on to breaking news. Am I right? No, okay. Yeah, sure. Yes, let's applaud. Yeah, we did. Oh, you did? I thought I heard. Was that? Yes. Radio breaking news. Medallion to 1010 Winds for round-the-clock coverage of Tropical Storm Ida. You remember Ida. And this is 1010 Winds reporter Carol Dioria accepting the award.
Thank you so much to the Silurians. This is really an honor. Breaking news is how radio really shines. When the lights go out, you still have radio, as long as you have a battery-operated device, But it's the part of the job that's exciting. It's also the part where you see the heartbreaking things. I mean, Ida was, people were dying in their basements. But it's getting it out in a hurry. And, I was just one cog in the wheel out on the street, but the people back at the radio station helped make me look good. So we get it as a team, and we do appreciate it.
The last category, TV breaking news. TV breaking news, the thing with the, nobody watches anymore because everybody streams. TV breaking news, Channel 7, WABC TV, for the coverage of the resignation of a governor by the name of, I don't know. His father was a really good governor. Producer, is Brian Lineker here? Yes. He's the producer of the story on WABC TV. Brian, come on up.
Well, thank you very much for this award. I always feel weird accepting him for Channel 7 because it's really just about being a big part of a team. I could stack the best show, but if the reporters aren't out there, photographers assigned my desk, if everyone isn't doing their job, we're not going to win this. So, I'm just happy to be up here. Thank you very much for the award, and thank you.
The new president is going to be Joe Berger. I'd love to just reiterate something he said weeks ago tonight when he was up here and said that it is really uplifting and it is so good to know that there are these many new news organizations in town that many of you probably have not heard of. I haven't even heard of some of the ones we honored tonight, but I am delighted that this is happening. And whatever we can do in the Silurians to support that and encourage more, I think we'll try to do. But anyway, Joe Berger is going to be the new president, and thank you.
First of all, let's give a big thank you to Mike Serrell for the terrific job he's done in keeping this Silurian Press Club a vital part of New York City journalism. Michael steered the club through a pandemic, which was not easy. He was able to keep the Silurians functioning at a superior level. We kept up our lunchtime speakers, people like Edward Sorrell, the cartoonist, Ben Smith, Craig Newmark, Michael Wolff, Marty Barron. These were all people we got to speak to the club, and Mike made all that happen. I've been asked to acquaint, so thank you, Mike, for your exceptional service and leadership. I've been asked to acquaint our guests with who we are and what we do. We're the almost 100-year-old press club with a very odd and esoteric name. As I said last year, our founders must have had a self-deprecating sense of humor because they named us after the Silurian geologic age. And they probably joked among themselves that the veteran and retired journalists who made up much of the club were a bunch of dinosaurs. Actually, I looked it up, dinosaurs didn't exist in the Silurian age. The age was notable for the discovery of fossils. So actually, our collection of more than 300 members includes many working journalists. The legendary Bob McFadden, a preeminent rewrite man and Pulitzer Prize winner, is still, after 60 years, is still writing advance obituaries of the nation's most prominent people. David Margolick is writing 2 biographies simultaneously, one on Sid Caesar and one on Jonas Salk. That's a strange combination, right? Tony Guida runs the comedian who was just here before. Where is he? You going to do a comedy show as well? Okay, thanks. Okay. Tony runs a weekly talk and interview show on New York for CUNY TV. Bill Deal recently published a second book on the stars he interviewed for radio. Chester Higgins is shooting photographs in Egypt for another book on Africa. And he was our winner of our Lifetime Achievement Award this year. Our club has a long and colorful past. It was founded in 1924 by a group of maverick Park Row newspaper veterans. Among its early members were Lincoln Steffens, John Steinbeck, William Randolph Hearst, Citizen Kane. The Silurians gather once a month at the National Arts Club to have lunch, listen to a prominent journalist, discuss their latest work. I mean, in addition to people I've mentioned, we've had Pete Hamill, Robert Cairo, who wrote The Power Broker, Gloria Steinem was here, Dan Rather, Ronan Farrow. In addition, the Silurians give out coveted awards, which we've been doing, and a Lifetime Achievement Award and the Peter Keyes Award, which goes to an outstanding local reporter who also happens to mentor young journalists. And perhaps the most important thing we do is we offer a chance once a month to schmooze with old comrades who worked in the same trenches you did and knew you when, which is the reason most of us joined. So please join us. By the way, I think, what's the age limit these days? 25, I think? You have to be 25. And you have to have worked as a journalist for 8 years. So, you don't have to be a dinosaur. Yeah, we give scholarships as well, and we also give money to journalists who've hit hard times. So we do a lot of things. Membership costs $60 a year. Outrageous, yeah. So if you worked for a journalist, if you worked as a journalist, please join us. Fill out an application. Silurians.org is the website. So I'm going to give the first President's Choice Award. It goes to a reporting team from the New York Times, Nicole Hong, Matthew Haag, and Patrick McGeehan. The Times team sketched the impact of the pandemic on the economic life of New York, not just by throwing out unemployment statistics or price statistics, but by examining concrete, sometimes small-bore situations and how they affected New Yorkers. The vanishing of the $1 a slice pizza, what the steep drop in foreign tourists had done to shopping in the boutiques of Soho, how remote work affected the iconic Empire State Building, what all those shacks outside restaurants portended for the future of dining in New York. As the Silurians judges wrote, these stories are examples of the kind of deep reporting and smart and elegant writing and insightful contextual analysis that helped readers understand the economic fallout from the pandemic. And as I told Patrick, when I was at Columbia Journalism School, we had a teacher, Mel Mencher, who told us, don't just take the press release, don't listen to the executives and the presidents and of organizations. Go down into the place where things are happening and talk to the real people. And then you'll find out what the real story is. That's what they did. So come up here, get your award.
Thank you to the Silurians for this recognition. As you can see, this was really a team effort, and if you look at the bylines on the stories, it really speaks to the collaborative spirit of the Metro desk at the New York Times. The amount of resources that went into these stories just speaks to the magnitude of what it took to cover New York City's recovery from the pandemic, and we were all living here, living through the story. So thank you all for reading. We also have to thank our editor, Diego, who couldn't be here today, and also to our current editor, Nestor Ramos. Thank you for sitting through this whole thing. Thank you all.
Thank you. This was a tremendous honor, and as Nicole said, we lived through this and saw the darkest days of the pandemic, and it was a privilege to work on these stories, and just coming here tonight to see the vibrancy of New York City coming back. It's so important, so thank you for honoring us.
I am going to give the second President's Choice Award. Goes to Newsday for its massive package of stories and videos called Policing on Long Island. Was an eye-opener, and I was one of the judges of this, even as the police killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis was inspiring a virtual anti-police uprising around the country by citizens of every background. Newsday's reporting, anchored by James Baumbach, Paul LaRocca, Sandra Peddie, and David Schwartz, and video producer Jeff Basinger, found in Nassau and Suffolk a long history of police abuse of suspects that continues to the present day. Most surprising was the department's historical and continued failure to hire minority officers, the people most likely to curb casual abuse by their white colleagues. The two departments hired just 67 black officers out of more than 6,500 black applicants since 2012. I would note that the reporting team got virtually no cooperation from the police departments involved or from other county officials, and had to resort to Freedom of Information Act requests in order to get a lot of their information, and a lot of deep digging of the kind that doesn't necessarily get rewarded, but we're all about local coverage. So we wanted to honor this piece. And who will accept the award for Newsday?
I have to say, the Silurians are a fun bunch. So, well, number one, thank you to the Silurians. Number two, how many people here are Silurian members? Can I see hands? So I'm trying to find the person who, during cocktail hour, was telling me that I can use this to get on the subway. I can just I don't know. Yeah. Well, thank you to the Silurians. Also, thank you to the Silurians for having us in person. I mean, how great is it to be back and seeing people and talking to people and seeing people in person? So thank you, Silurians, for having it in person. Obviously, I'm accepting this on behalf of my Newsday colleagues, Paul LaRocca, David Schwartz, Sandra, Peddie, Jeff Basinger, who's not here. So please give a round of applause for them. When I learned that I was going to give this brief speech, don't worry, they're not going to play the music. When I learned that I Googled, how do you give a speech? And it said, oh, get everybody to clap. So thank you for everybody for doing their part. Thank you also, obviously, to Newsday, to owner Pat Dolan, who, as Sandra mentioned earlier, is not afraid to get his hands dirty. Sets a great example for all of us. For publisher Debbie Krennick, and for everybody. And we have an incredible staff filled with. Just this project alone, on a serious note, came about in the wake of the George Floyd murder. And following that, this team of investigative reporters jumped and looked at different stories. And I couldn't do it justice to even explain what the stories were. I would recommend that you guys all go to newsday.com and please read these stories. I think the best thing I can say about these stories is what I've heard from all the other stories today is that they're holding people to account. And really, isn't that what we're here for? There's a Newsday commercial that makes me think of maybe a couple 6 months ago or so, and it was, if we didn't do this, who would? I think of that today when I look around the room, with all the stories that we are being awarded here, is that, this is, if we didn't do it, who would? So congratulations to all the award winners here today, and thank you again to the Silurians.
The traditional passing of the president's gavel to the new president. I never actually used the gavel to bring any conclave to order, but it could be that the Silurians will get more unruly in the next 2 years, and that Joe will need to slam it down a couple of times. So, Joe, here's the gavel, and good luck in your new position.